Dan and I have a way of meeting at some really interesting things. I think in the last 9 months, we did extensive El Nino planning. Then we met for the Aliso Canyon gas leak, which is the largest natural gas leak in the western part of the United States in history. And then 2 weeks ago, we met for a debriefing on the Paris 2015, November 2015 terrorist event. So we kind of, go to really interesting things. So those of you not from California, I want to say welcome to God's Natural Disaster Theme Park. So hopefully you won't go on any of the rides while you're here. So that being said, I actually started out in the fire service, 22 years in the fire service, 8 years as the emergency manager for the second largest and most at-risk city in the nation, Los Angeles. Los Angeles, we say there's 6 things that keep us awake at night. We have, of course, pandemic, because of, with globalization and urbanization, we have more people living closer together, so pandemic is always a challenge. And of course, unfortunately, in our time, violent actors, whether domestic or foreign. And then we have catastrophic wildfire, not because more fires are burning, it's just we're living more in areas that have historically and naturally burned. And the big one, the maximum of maximums, as Craig Fugate from FEMA talks about, the maximum of maximums in California is the catastrophic earthquake, and then cyber, because so much of what we do is based on computers. And then the new one, it's not really new, but we've just coined the new name for it, is adverse weather. So last week in LA, we had triple-digit temperatures. Some of you, triple-digit temperatures are no big deal. In LA, triple digits are a big deal. For one thing, they affect the two ends of the spectrum of humans, the small folks and the older folks. So adverse weather is always an issue. El Nino planning was a significant issue. All of those issues we address now with a significant arsenal and capability through GIS. When I took the Field Observer Display Processor course probably 15 years ago as a then young and healthy firefighter, we walked a 10,000-foot simulated fire trail with a topo map, a number 2 pencil, and a compass. And we shot back azimuths, and we did all the calculations, and we drew mapping products. At that time, you were allowed to use the Garmin GPS tool. You could dangle it off your equipment belt just as breadcrumbs, but you were not allowed to use it to generate the map because who could trust it? So, who could trust it? Now, the whole Field Observer Display Processor course is all digitized, it's changed, we're in a whole new world. So, that being said, Dan talked about the technology and a lot of the concept and the mindset of applying it. So I was upstairs in the Public Safety Summit. A lot of the talk wasn't so much about the technology because we love the technology is moving forward, it's what we need, it's when we need it, but it's about the leadership. How do we lead the technology? Because I think there's a Peter Drucker quote that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. If the strategy is to move forward with the technology, you can rest assured if you don't address and find some way to either work with or overcome the competing cultures, the strategy won't work. It'll be slow-rolled, it'll be misapplied, or it'll be completely ignored. So I just wanted to impart a couple of things, leadership lessons, and I go from Dr. Seuss to Bach, to General Petraeus, and the Bach is not Johann Sebastian Bach, it's Richard Bach, and we'll see in a minute. So a book that sat in my office for years, people come and go, why do you have kids' books here? And so if you've read it, whether or not you read it, Oh, the Places You'll Go talks about having vision and moving forward. So embracing the technology, the connectivity challenges of today is about being visionary. It may not seem visionary to us because all of us, one of the reasons we're here is because we actually have embraced the technology matters to us, but to the people you work with, you have to be visionary, you have to cause them to be visionary and look for the next issue. So how do we take that and how do we move forward with the technology? We have to be visionary leaders. Richard Bach. Years ago, a young sailor in the Eastern Mediterranean in the mid-'70s, I go into a bookstore and I see Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I'm like, what the heck is Jonathan Livingston Seagull? Didn't have a lot to read, spending, 60, 70, 80 days at sea at a time. So I was looking at any books that I could have other than the typical reading material you found in the enlisted men's berthing quarters aboard ship. So, of course, I'm reading Richard Bach's books, and my colleagues are like, what's wrong with you? But anyway, Bach, in the preamble, the preface to Illusions, it's a little story about these creatures that cling to the rocks in a stream. And they live, they're doing fine. They're birthed, they grow, they do what creatures clinging to rocks do, and then they die. And so one day, one of the creatures in the stream says, what happens if I let go? What happens if I let go? And the other creatures go, no, don't let go. You can't let go. You'll die, you'll be crushed, you'll be dragged across the bottom. So it's a nice little story, it's allegorical in its nature because it's about letting go. Like I said, I grew up in the mapping world where, in fact, Gabby Noriega, one of my colleagues, is here at the Emergency Operations Center in the city of LA. Several years ago, I said, always have a roll of clear acetate and a set of vis-a-vis markers. Why? Because we put up the printed map, which was already old by the time we printed it. We put up a piece of clear acetate, and we marked up the progress of the incident or event with the vis-a-vis markers. So at some point, the younger folks, the smarter folks, and the technology said, Jim, let go. For years, I felt I needed to have an ArcGIS specialist there to help me as a firefighter even spell GIS. ArcGIS Online came in, and all of a sudden, I was empowered. Me as an operator, I'm not a ones and zeros person. Firefighter, emergency manager. The technology now empowered me. I could do what I was totally dependent on a specialist to help me with. Still needed the specialist because the complexities and the deeper dive with the technology, I needed that partnership. But now I had a tool. Dan talked about a tool, don't let your tools be an anchor. I had a tool now I had the pole that a pole vaulter uses. I was able to leap higher. Yet the thing that I always tell the folks I work with is that if I raise the bar, then I either have to, teach you to jump higher or teach you to jump differently. Some of you in the audience probably remember when the 7-foot mark was broken in the high jump event in the Olympics. For years, people did a scissors jump or a barrel roll, and nobody could break the 7-foot mark until Dick Fosbury came along and did the Fosbury flop. It was about shifting your center of gravity, and he broke the 7-foot mark. Technology today has helped us to break the 7-foot mark in terms of information sharing, data sharing, and that leads to better and more rapid and definitive decision making. Because in the world I work in, bad decisions cost people's lives. All those things are part of a culmination. Talk about leading, and you never know when you're going to have to lead or what you'll have to lead through. So visionary, letting go. On November 1st, 2013, was my first day as the interim fire chief in the city of Los Angeles. I had left the fire service. I had let go. I had become an emergency manager, related but totally different discipline. Much more complex, much more broad. Mayor says, Jim, we need an interim fire chief. And I went, He says, you got it. 6:30 that morning, my wife's driving me in because I had to pick up my city car. She's driving me in, and we're driving in, headed east on the 10 freeway toward downtown LA. And, my wife, she's very spiritual. She says, maybe we should pray. And I go, honey, I can't close my eyes. I'm driving. So we go in, and so 6:30, I report for duty, and the day starts. And before noon, I'm at LAX for an active shooter incident. But because of everything I'd done before, visionary, letting go, trying to be a leader, especially a leader in chaotic situations, I was actually more comfortable in this incident than I would find that I'd ever be in front of city council arguing budget issues. The third book is All In. So in this book, General David Petraeus gives a lot of leadership examples, but one is of particular note to me, and I have to put on my specs here. He talks about, his command, he always puts up the Frederick Remington print of the Stampede. I'd seen this picture before, just in passing, never paid much attention to it because I'm not into, Western art. But what he said relative to this print rang very true to me in how we have to lead our way, especially in our business, through chaos. And a big part of the arsenal that we have is our ability to leverage technology. So General Petraeus said, I use this image to tell you that I am comfortable with semi-chaotic situations. The picture depicts an outrider galloping at full tilt over rough terrain at the height of a violent storm, while steering a willful mount and guiding a sometimes frightened and unthinking herd of cattle to its destination. It represents getting the job done despite the challenges. The terrain is rocky. The wind is in their faces and it's raining sideways. Some of the cattle will get behind us. Will get ahead of us. That's fine. We'll catch up. Some of the cattle will fall behind and we will circle back and get them. That's fine. We will bring them on. We must be comfortable with this environment of uncertainty, challenge, risk, danger, and competing agendas. We need to accept it, but we need to do more than simply hang on to the saddle. We must master our mount, and we must flourish in the apparent chaos. And he goes on to say, I am comfortable with this. But I think a lot of the comfort, certainly the comfort that I get, and I venture to say my colleagues up here get, the comfort that we have in a chaotic situation, because most of our workday doesn't happen in a pristine laboratory or a very ordered office. And as we say, the highest thing is at stake with decisions that we make. But a lot of that comfort has to do with the ability to apply practical, simple, easy-to-use technology. And also being visionary, letting go leaders to apply that technology. So it all boils down to, in conclusion for me and what the team we have at the Homeland Security Advisory Council, we talk about the Leadership LLC. So, lifetime learner, we continue to learn, and with the technology we have to continue to learn as leaders. We continue to learn because it makes us better, it makes us more effective, and in our case it saves lives. Listening leader. Listening means honoring and embracing the perspectives. So in a conversation with Helen prior to this event, and we talked about the cube, where you have a peephole on top and a peephole on the side. And you say, so Helen, you're looking from the side, what do you see? She says, I see a triangle. Says, Jim, what do you see from the top? I see a circle. So listening, we listen and we honor those perspectives, because what's inside this cube is actually a cone. Both perspectives are accurate, but unless we're actively listening, we don't take advantage of those perspectives. If you have perspective, use it or lose it. And then technically competent. I have nowhere near the technical competency of Gabby Noriega, but as a contemporary leader, I've found it important for me to embrace the technology, to at least have a working knowledge and be conversant in the technology. Because that competence leads to confidence. It also helps me sell the message. Leaders tell the story about an individual issue, about an organizational issue, about a technological change. So, that's the Leadership LLC, and the technology is very important. Today's challenge is a challenge of connectivity, not a challenge of acceptance. Hey, Jim.